Welcome back to On Track GP. I'm Jamie Chambers, and these are F1 2023 conclusions brought to you by Planet F1. Max Verstappen's rivals are facing F1's newest all-time great as he and Red Bull stood above everyone else in the 2023 season. How to sum up the 23 season in a single sentence: Max Verstappen making history, Sergio Perez very nearly becoming history, and the rest. This year was very much a tale of two Red Bull drivers, with Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren and Aston Martin all taking it in turns but never quite succeeding in taking the fight to the most dominant team in F1 history. Having last stopped for an overall assessment during the summer break, here are our final conclusions from 2023. Max Verstappen and Red Bull are already among the great driver-team F1 partnerships. The true extent of Red Bull and Verstappen's dominance in 2023 hit home hardest on the day they failed to win. As Carlos Sainz crossed the finish line to take victory for Ferrari in Singapore, the sight of a team other than Red Bull, a driver other than Verstappen, winning a race somehow felt like a novel event. How things have changed since late 2021. Even Michael Schumacher at his Ferrari best had a feisty upstart in the McLaren, or a Williams snapping at his heels. Even Lewis Hamilton during his dominant days with Mercedes had a tricky teammate to contend with, or a four-time world champion in a Ferrari to worry about. And what if this is not the end, but merely still the beginning? For all the public optimism of other teams for 2024, Verstappen and Red Bull have established an advantage they will surely carry through until F1's next regulation change in 2026 and possibly beyond. Different winners will likely remain a rarity as Verstappen and Red Bull continue to cement their names among the most formidable to have come before. To the list, including Schumacher, Ferrari, Hamilton, Mercedes and Senna, McLaren, now add Verstappen, Red Bull. 2024 is the last real chance for Mercedes and Ferrari to get it right. For Mercedes and Ferrari, this was largely a wasted year rooted in bad decisions from last season. In failing to recognise their 22 car concepts had limited long-term potential, both teams consigned themselves to reversing out of a cul-de-sac, allowing Red Bull to break free and achieve an unprecedented level of dominance. Rarely has second place in the constructors' standings secured by Mercedes in Abu Dhabi felt more like first loser award. But Ferrari at least did manage to salvage something from the season, achieving the distinction of being the only team other than Red Bull to win a race and setting a healthy number of pole positions along the way. Mercedes often looked out of ideas as the W14 morphed into a muddled patchwork mess of 22, 23 and 24 ideas. The question remains, did Lewis Hamilton really sign up for 2 more years of this? With 2024 cars set to establish a base for 25, as attention gradually turns to F1's new regulations, next season is almost certainly the very last chance for these teams to get it right under the current rules cycle. And the signs for Ferrari and Mercedes, despite the current on-track evidence, are promising. Because unlike 2022, there is now a far greater awareness of the true secrets behind Red Bull's success. Helped by Perez's crash in Monaco qualifying, giving everyone a full 360-degree view of the RB19 craned away into high skies. Turns out it wasn't the side pods after all, unfortunately for Mercedes, but the high roof Venturi tunnels within the floor combined with a longer travel suspension, allowing Red Bull to run a lower ride height and effectively seal these tunnels for improved performance. It is a function of ground effect that real performance differentiators are hidden underneath, with this situation likened in some quarters to the original ground effect era in the 1970s when Lotus rivals were slow to understand exactly what wonders Colin Chapman had worked. For Lotus and Chapman then, it is Red Bull and Adrian Newey now. If technical analysts in F1 media have become wise to Red Bull's deepest secrets, chances are that the technical departments of Ferrari and Mercedes, if they know what's good for them, have too. For these teams in particular, the night is darkest just before the dawn, so there really are no excuses. Anything Aston Martin achieved before 26 is a bonus. What was the most important moment of Aston Martin's season? Not Fernando Alonso's podium in Bahrain, the result that validated an extraordinary winter's development work? Or when he pitted for another set of dry tyres just as rain arrived in Monaco and missed his best shot at a win of a race? In fact, it wasn't anything at all that happened on track, but the morning of Wednesday, May 24th. AM F1 team has today announced it is entering into a works partnership with Honda from 2026, began the statement to confirm Aston Martin's potential ticket to the top, and bringing a much needed reminder that anything the team achieved before then is indeed a bonus. In hindsight, Aston Martin were promoted to a false position at the start of 23 as a result of Ferrari and Mercedes missteps. Alonso's run of 6 podiums in the first 8 races bringing unrealistic expectations upon a team ranked 7 in the 2022 championship. Their gradual retreat was inevitable, not merely because Merc and Ferrari mounted recoveries of sorts, but because Aston Martin remain at an early stage of their development, still putting the pieces in place for a prosperous future. This was also the year the team made the move to a new state-of-the-art factory, the second most important moment of their season. Aston Martin half a step behind McLaren in the infrastructure race between the Mercedes customers to shatter F1's glass ceiling. As McLaren discovered in 2022, while waiting for their new wind tunnel is open for business, it is difficult to maintain standards today when there is such a huge focus on tomorrow. Aston Martin almost always become the victims of their own success, the criticism that followed their mid-season decline disproportionate and a reflection of today's instant results culture, especially for a team actually ahead of their schedule. Despite Alonso's reputation as someone who would start an argument in an empty room, he too is aware of the time it takes to build a winning team and has embraced in open arms the challenge of taking Aston Martin to new heights, all while enjoying his strongest season in over a decade. Still as hungry and motivated as ever he was, and yes, still more than capable of winning the World Championship with the right car, he is the perfect personality to drive the project forward even if, at 42, he may ultimately not be the one to reap the rewards. McLaren and Williams are in very good hands. Before this season, most fans would have known Andrea Stella as the voice in Alonso's ear at Ferrari, the race engineer he later took with him to McLaren. Calm amid the chaos, trustworthy and loyal, it's always a good sign when drivers take people from team to team. But did he really have the necessary attributes to assume one of the most coveted and high-pressure positions in Formula One? When McLaren announced Stella's promotion to team principal in the very same statement in which they confirmed Andrea Seidel's departure in last December, it had to feel of some more of a limited disruption and continue the team down the path of a Sauber-bound Seidel had set. More about the project itself than the person. There were fears that the job could swallow Stella whole following McLaren's dreadful start to the season after missing development targets last winter. Yet in the months since, Stella, carrying himself with the unassuming intelligence that characterises the most remarkable F1 people, has proved himself as a leader of serious substance. Having recognised the team had lost their way technically, Stella wasted little time in adjusting the structure of the team, putting the pieces in place for McLaren's amazing recovery to emerge as Red Bull's most consistent threat come mid-season. It's a similar story at Williams, where James Vowles, previously known primarily for the Valtteri, it's James radio soundbite as a Mercedes strategist, has made a fine first impression. Only the third team principal in Williams' entire history, Vowles has a great respect for the position he now holds, frequently reiterating his refusal to make short-term fixes and insisting every decision he takes during his stewardship will be made with the team's long-term interests in mind. His treatment of his drivers demonstrated an emotional intelligence reminiscent of his mentor Toto Wolff, among the first of the new breed of very modern F1 managers. Compare and contrast, for instance, Vowles' unflinching support of a struggling Logan Sargent to Gunther Steiner's almost sadistic deconstruction of Mick Schumacher in 22, undermining his own driver at every opportunity. A sign of Vowles' commitment to making only the right choices for Williams could be found in the team's extended search for a new technical director, with Pat Fry's appointment only being announced at the end of July. The signing of Fry, responsible for the 2019 car that ultimately returned McLaren to winning ways, and the man who made Alpine look semi-respectable in 2022, will ensure Williams' revival after their best championship placing since 2017 does not end here. Rest assured, these grand old teams are in very good hands. Now, a few other brief conclusions we can take from the 2023 season. Team Enstone as we know it is dead. Alpine are a marketing scheme with an F1 team attached. The public sackings of Otmar Szafnauer and Alan Permane at Spa was a reminder that sport is a people's business that treats people badly. Las Vegas will be a highlight of the F1 calendar for years to come, and its success puts Miami in the shade. Miami's future has to be as a night race. Track limits are the scourge of modern Formula One. The post-race nonsense in Austria made a mockery of the sport and must never be repeated. 3 practice sessions on a standard race weekend is unnecessary in F1's modern era. The 60-minute FP1 session in place of a sprint weekend is the popular among drivers and should be a starting point for any future format changes. Track limits are the scourge of Formula One. The post-race nonsense in Austria made a mockery of the sport and must never be repeated. 3 practice sessions on a standard race weekend is unnecessary in F1's modern era. The 60-minute FP1 session in place of sprint weekends is popular among drivers and should be a starting point for any future format changes. Maybe it's time to stop the practice of standing starts after red flags if race control can't be trusted to use them sensibly. The end of the Australian Grand Prix was down there with Abu Dhabi 2021 when it came to F1 choosing show over sport. And finally, a memo to all stewards everywhere. Please stop noting things. The sight of that blue FIA banner at the top of the screens is the ultimate passion killer, and its appearances should be limited. Only let us know when incidents are being investigated. Thanks for joining us for our conclusions to an astonishing 2023 season. What are your biggest takeaways from the season? What would you like to see come the start of the 2024 campaign? Let us know what you think in the comments, and remember to like, comment, share and subscribe. This has been On Track GP. I've been Jamie Chambers. Keep the pedal to the metal, and I'll catch you in the next video.